first came the floodwaters.
It's a historical moment. Yes, it is a historical time, and it's such a loss for everyone.
More than 2 weeks later, the extent of damage is becoming clear.
This is going to be costly damage for us moving forward.
It's going to take a long time for people around here to recover.
The financial assistance available now, and the federal dollars not secured yet.
We really want to start helping people get back on their feet.
Plus, the cleanup, consumer warnings, and insurance denials.
Trying to read my policy is like I need an attorney to understand what it all tells me.
Where things stand in southeastern Wisconsin after the floodwaters have receded. From the Fox 6 studios, this is Open Record. I'm Bryan Polcyn, and I'm joined as always by our Open Records executive producer, Sarah Smith. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
And we are joined by Contact 6's Jenna Sachs. Hi, Jenna.
Hi.
We are recording this episode on, it's Thursday, August 27th. I just looked at the date and thought it can't be. It is. Okay.
No, it's Wednesday, though.
Yeah.
Summer's almost over.
Well, we're recording on a Wednesday. You're right. We're recording on a Wednesday, but it is August 27th.
I do that to you. Every
time
I
we get the
write
date-
up
yeah,
one of these
that's
scripts,
okay.
I always write the date wrong.
I didn't know. Did you notice? I didn't notice any
I
difference?
almost went,
I had
it's August 27th?
Sure.
It is.
It's August 27th. It's not. Whatever. We're recording on a Wednesday. Here's the point. It's been more than 2 weeks. 17 days? I don't know if that's exactly right now. So I was going to say 17.
is.
It could be.
It
Okay,
happened August
17
The
days
10th, yes.
since a so-called 1,000-year rainfall devastated the Milwaukee area. Thousands of people are still navigating the aftermath of flooded homes, cars, and businesses, many of them waiting to hear whether FEMA will provide assistance. We're going to talk to Jenna about where things stand today. Plus, we have three special guests, some great interviews today with Milwaukee's Commissioner of Public Works, with the American Red Cross, and an insurance attorney who represents policyholders in challenging cases. A lot of great information coming up today. We'll have all of that and more when we come back after this.
We are back on Open Record. We now have a better idea of just how bad that August 10th storm was. It damaged Milwaukee County, a lot of the surrounding communities that we've seen. At the same time, we're getting more information about those floods. We're also waiting on a really big decision. Is FEMA going to send aid to the area? Jenna, first of all, how extensive is the damage?
Right. We're getting numbers continuously on this situation. It was recently said at a press conference by Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley that there's about $34 million in damages. Impact 211 is also tracking damage. And as of Monday, it knew of about 24,000 damage reports, most of those from Milwaukee County, but also from Waukesha, Washington, and Ozaukee County. 83% of the total damage reports are coming from Milwaukee County at about 19,000 damage reports. And of that total number of damage reports, about 8,500 were structural damage. So that's major damage for people. We know the worst hit zip code was 53218. That's on like the west side of the city near Timmerman Airport. They had about 4,000 reports just in that one zip code. And then second worst was 53209, which is west of Shorewood and Whitefish Bay up to where we are in Brown Deer.
Yeah, that Timmerman area, I remember it was like 14 inches of rain.
Yeah,
I just remember
that's not far from where I live.
A lot of rain.
What was crazy is this was like a bullseye over. You said this is mostly in Milwaukee County. This is if that kind of heavy rainfall happened in a more rural area, you'd still have problems and closed roads and other things. But the fact that it's centered right over such a heavy urban area, the damage is tremendous. And just the number of houses that were involved. We're talking about I think they said something like 3,400 houses have had damage assessments, and more than half of them were considered major or total losses. That's incredible from this one rainfall. But what I want to know is we're waiting on FEMA, and it feels like it's been a long wait. And I don't know if this is more than standard. It's certainly more than we remember from back in 2008. What do we know about FEMA assistance?
So as of right now, FEMA financial assistance is not available yet, and there's no set timeline for when it will make that decision. But FEMA has been on the ground in Wisconsin for a while now, and in Milwaukee County, supporting the state's request that it do assessments. So basically, FEMA's putting information together, verifying information, reviewing damage, and they're putting together a recommendation for the governor. So an official request for aid can be made. So that the state has to submit this request to FEMA, and then there must be a presidential declaration confirming the state has met that necessary threshold for damages.
And it sounds like numerically we certainly have in terms of damage. The question is, you still have to get that presidential declaration.
Exactly. And once approved by the president, if that happens, FEMA provides 75% of reimbursement of those eligible costs. So you can see why they're so interested in getting that money. The state pays 12.5%, and local governments share the remaining 12.5%.
There's certainly a lot of people who need help in the meantime. Outside of FEMA, there is financial assistance available now through the American Red Cross. This is aid that is meant for people whose homes have the most severe damage. And that is where our first guest comes in today. We welcome Catherine Halverson with the American Red Cross. Catherine, thank you for being here on Open Record.
Thank you so much for having me.
Tell us what the American Red Cross's role is here, especially now as there's this long wait to find out if federal assistance is coming.
Absolutely. Well, I'm extremely proud to be a part of the Red Cross. To date, Red Crossers have provided more than 670 overnight shelter stays. With the help of partners, we've served 5,600 meals and snacks. And over the weekend, we've had disaster volunteers completing distribution of emergency supplies. So everything from bleach, a mop, gloves to help people prevent further damage to their homes. With that said, we've distributed 19,000 emergency relief supplies to over 3,300 households. And on top of all of this work today, we begin the process of providing financial assistance for those who qualify. You know, we say that help can't wait when emergencies strike. So now we've got these teams that are conducting these disaster assessments in these affected areas, working to get information out through flyers. And people are really going to our website and applying for this aid.
I'm sure many people are hoping they would qualify for aid, but who will qualify for the Red Cross aid?
Yeah, so a lot of the qualifications are listed on our website, but basically if you have majorly damaged homes, that's what's gonna be what gets you that financial aid. So really those homes that are unlivable. Last night we had 51 clients in our shelter. So we know that the need is great. As of Tuesday, we've received more than 700 applications for financial aid, and our teams are working around the clock to quickly assess who will qualify, and then within a week be able to notify those clients that we can help. So it's a huge effort, and we will make every effort to connect with people whose homes received that major structural damage or were completely destroyed.
Is there any difference if you are a renter versus a homeowner? Because the home may be owned by someone else, the home that's destroyed, but you don't have a place to live and your belongings were damaged. How does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would just guide people to call 1-800-RED-CROSS if they're not sure of their eligibility. We'll be able to walk through that with you. And then there will also be a list of requirements on what we look for the most. So I would just guide people to our website to look for that information.
I know you said hundreds of people, have already gone and went through the application process. If someone wants to apply, is there still time to do that? How do they do that?
There is still time. Today is just rolling out the process of emailing, texting, calling anyone who has applied for it. And we just ask people to be patient as we work through this. There's a high influx of people asking for this aid. So we're working really around the clock to make sure that those who qualify get the help that they deserve.
Is there a finite dollar amount, amount you're working with? You've identified the worst houses and how much their cost is, or are you trying to help a certain number of people? How do you figure out where to stop?
Yeah, so the data that our teams are doing with these damage assessments will be really critical to understanding the full scope and impact of this disaster. So it's hard to put a dollar amount on it at this time. And it's, every case by case is going to look different. So it's hard to just say, one family could be receiving a certain dollar amount versus somebody else because we're still gathering that information.
Do you have a finite pool you're pulling from for this? Where does the funding come to help all of these people in a disaster like this?
Yeah, so we're a charity. We don't get government funding. So we really rely on the generosity of the public to help us fulfill our mission. So we know the need is great, and we just ask those who are looking for ways to help to consider the Red Cross.
When you talk about the people applying for it, I do wonder if people get Red Cross approval, if they apply, if they are approved, will that in any way affect what they could potentially get from FEMA later on? Is there any sort of a connection between the two? Are they completely two separate things?
We are two separate things. I can't speak on behalf of FEMA. I will say, even when we responded to home fires locally, we are always giving other resources to people on where they can possibly get extra funding. So this is just a small step to help people get back on their feet and really help in just a small way.
You mentioned providing emergency shelter earlier. Can you tell me a bit about what the Red Cross has been doing already to support these homeowners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one important thing I wanted to touch on is currently we have shelter open at Marshall High School, and it's being relocated today to the Milwaukee Environmental Sciences Academy.
And today being just a reminder for those who hear this, this is Wednesday, August 27th. So by the time you hear it, it will have already happened, right?
Yes, yes. So the new shelter is expected to be fully operational by late afternoon today. And this location is just carefully being considered to help the communities most impacted. It's in a centralized location. And again, this is because Marshall High School, the school year is approaching for them.
Just a quick
as far as
I'm sorry, continue.
what we've been doing. Oh, go ahead.
No, continue, please.
So we've been providing hot meals, shelter, emotional support, health services. So really that casework to the long-term recovery is just beginning to happen.
I just want to know for those who are thinking, I want to apply, where did they go? Tell us about the website. What do they do?
Yeah, just go to redcross.org and we've got right on the main page Wisconsin floods. So it will talk through how to apply. You'll have to put your name. We only ask that one person applies per household, and then we'll be able to get back to you within a week's time, and we'll go from there.
Catherine Halverson with the American Red Cross, thank you for joining us here on Open Record and for all the work you do.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
We'll be back with more right after this.
We are back on Open Record. As we know, homeowners in the Milwaukee area, they've suffered thousands, even tens of thousands of dollars in damage thanks to these floods. And many are learning, as they've written to our newsroom, their insurance isn't going to cover it. So joining us now is attorney Justin Wallace. Justin actually spent years working for insurance companies, and now he represents the policyholders. So Justin, the feeling coming into our newsroom, something we hear from a lot of people, is these companies are jerks, right? People have a lot of emotions tangled up in this. It affects their home, so it's very personal to them. But is it fair to call these insurance companies jerks in this situation?
So floods are a little bit different because your standard homeowner's insurance policy doesn't cover flood damage. And it's unfortunate. And most people, if they turn to the very back of their policy, they'll see a specific page that says, this is not flood insurance. So to the extent that people are making flood claims, I would, in a rare turn of events, argue that the insurance companies are not necessarily being jerks by saying, we don't cover floods. Now, that isn't to say that people don't have options. There are other coverage parts, such as sewer or water backup and some other ideas that may provide some relief. But this is a situation where there was a terrible tragedy that is unfortunately just traditionally not something that standard homeowners policies cover. You need special flood insurance for these sorts of losses, which most people don't have.
I've had a number of people say to me, don't tell them it came in through the window, say it was a sewer backup, or say the sump pump failed. I hear that a lot. Number one, is that good advice? And number two, does that really matter? I mean, is the insurance company going to figure out the cause either way?
So great question. And I would say it does matter. And here is how it matters is your insurance policy oftentimes provides you a number of different types of coverages, and it uses specific words to define what those coverages are. And not every policy is the same. So you might have some policies that have some collapse coverage. And if your foundation collapsed, you may be able to argue that that coverage applies. There may be other kind of ensuing loss situations where you can look at your policy and then, look at the cause. And sometimes there's more than one cause, and try to make some creative arguments about how your insurance could cover this. I think it's a good idea for people to do, especially if they're facing very high losses with the statement from their carrier that they're not covering anything. Take a good read through your policy and see if you can find some spots where they might be vulnerable.
I think one of the questions too is like, okay, so obviously if you live in a floodplain, and then correct me, so you cannot get flood insurance if you live in a floodplain?
I think, or you may be obligated to get it?
Obligated? Yeah, I guess that's step one. I guess then the other part is like, so then is the answer to all of this after everything is like, oh, we have to get flood insurance?
A couple of things. So flood insurance is fairly expensive. And in my experience, I've almost never, I don't know that I've ever seen somebody who on their own went out and bought flood insurance. I think it's almost always when your mortgage company says, we're not going to, put all of our equity into this house if we don't have some assurance that if there's a flood, that there'll be insurance there. And I've seen flood insurance quotes as something like $1,000 a year. And so I think that, when people say, should we go out and buy flood insurance? Well, it certainly would help here. If this is a 1 in 100 year flood and you're paying $1,000 a year for a flood premium, would you hit $100,000 over 100 years before you'd get a loss? It's kind of the calculus to go through.
So obviously you're an attorney. When would you advise someone fight back, right? We're hearing from a lot of people who are frustrated, but when would you say you have a case?
So the points that were made earlier about the kind of the causes of loss and some creative word interpretation are well taken. And it's worth, I think, having somebody take a look through your situation to see what your options might be. And I think the time to do that is when you get a denial letter. It's hard for a law office like mine to figure out why the insurance company isn't paying you until that point. And while we can probably guess or we can infer from phone conversations you may have had, at the point in time when your insurance company is saying, here is the policy language we're relying upon to not pay you, it makes it easier to send it to a lawyer or a friend or even an insurance agent, and say, hey, does this pass the smell test here in the industry, and kind of get a thumbs up and a thumbs down? Because one thing that we're seeing already is some carriers are having what I would refer to as a canned response to policyholders. So everybody who makes a claim, we're going to tell them X. And those are the situations in which insurance companies can get themselves in trouble because, that this isn't a one size fits all kind of business. And if you're not considering the specifics of people's cases, well, you're probably missing something.
You mentioned get that denial letter. I wonder, for a lot of people, their first step is to call their agent, and their agent's going to tell them, yeah, you're not covered for this. Do you say, I don't care, I still want to file a claim? Is that what you're suggesting?
That is what I'm suggesting. So the way that I look at it is you're paying X dollars a year in exchange for insurance. And if your mindset is, well, if I make a claim, my premiums might go up, and so I shouldn't do that. Well, then why would you ever buy the insurance in the first instance if your intention isn't to make a claim under your policies when something bad happened? And, one thing I hear that I'm sure you guys hear too is, these insurance policies are impossible to read. They're not written in clear language. A reasonable policyholder or homeowner can't really tell reading their policy, is this covered or not? So ask your carrier to tell, is this covered or not? And if it's not, let me see the language why, and let me take a look at it from there. But that kind of narrows your attempt to try to interpret a 200-page document, and at least you can get down to a specific clause or sentence that is more reasonable to try to figure out if they're right or not.
Now, my understanding is that while this was a rainfall event, but some were sewer backups, some were water infiltrated the house or whatever it is. Some policies, my understanding, and I don't know, but I'm hearing people say some will cover the sewer backup, some won't. Do you have to have a special clause? Do you need to make sure that at least that part is backed or is covered in your policy?
There are far more common than flood insurance in Wisconsin is a sewer and water backup endorsement. And it's usually a specified cause of loss under your policy with a different limit. So I've seen a lot of, water sewer backup endorsements with a $25,000 limit or a $50,000 limit. And if you have that coverage, you definitely have a stronger argument with your carrier that this was water that backed up through my sewer drain pipes. And therefore that triggers the water and sewer backup endorsement for sure. It helps your situation. These aren't worlds where there are lots of 100% answers to questions. There are words and policies that are subject to interpretation. There are factual events that are also can fall under multiple different hats. You know, a foundation collapse can also be from groundwater, can also be from a water and sewer backup. And so having somebody to try to, look through those different parts of your insurance policy and kind of congeal them into something that you can use with your carrier can be important here because it's confusing and complicated.
I'm assuming that's more cost effective than getting flood insurance. Would you pay a little more if you have an extra clause or something like that on your policy?
Yeah, the water and sewer backup endorsement is far more reasonable, and far more people will have that and buy that. The flood insurance is almost like a unicorn to me. Like you hear about it, but you almost never see it. And I've had one case involving flood insurance in my career, and the general sense is that floods are not covered by homeowners policies. And I think that's kind of the big conceptual take home. That being said, water backing up through your storm drain, if you have that endorsement, oftentimes covered. There's some collapse endorsements that can sometimes work in your benefit. But the uphill battle that most homeowners are facing is that, generally speaking, homeowners insurance doesn't cover floods.
What about sump pump failures? If you, because I hear a lot of people saying, well, my sump pump didn't work and I've got battery backup and that still didn't work. Does that matter? Does that make a difference?
So it could. And some people even have kind of a mechanical breakdown section in their policy that could theoretically apply to. The conceptual uphill battle you have there is what you're going to hear from the carrier is, well, your sump pump failed because it was inundated with flood water and we don't cover floods. And so if you're a creative insurance company, you might ask the question, would this have happened, but for the mechanical failure with your sump pump or not? And I think that's going to be a hard question to answer. But if you can, if your plumber says your sump pump shorted out or, had a mechanical failure for some other reason, and, you could find opportunities for coverage there. And I think that the questions you guys are asking are great ones. And I think that they emphasize that while there's a general principle we're dealing with here, it's important to have somebody look at the particulars of your case and your policy to see what's going on for you, especially if we're talking about thousands or tens of thousands of your dollars.
I mean, myself included, I think I didn't really think about any of my homeowners insurance until this last rainfall and all this damage. And thankfully we didn't have a ton, but it's really prompted me to go, should we look at our stuff and have somebody read through it? Is that something you suggest? Sometimes it takes a crazy event like this to have people go, oh, maybe I should look through stuff.
What I would tell people in particular is use this as a moment to say, hey, maybe we should make sure that we have the insurance coverages we want. Find a really good insurance agent that you trust. And that person will likely be paid based on your commission on your premiums, but sit down with somebody and say, hey, what endorsements are out there? Like, what coverages could I buy if I wanted to? And have them list off. And, you might hear, well, you can buy a farm field fire coverage, for example. And you think to yourself, well, I live in the middle of Waukesha. I don't need that. Okay, what's next? And at least get the information on what you can buy. And so if you find yourself in a situation like this, flood insurance, as kind of silly as it's to say, at least you can blame yourself for not buying it in the future, as opposed to just not even knowing it was something you could do.
By the way, I'm glad you said earlier that why do you buy an insurance policy if you're not going to file a claim when something happens, considering my family's had to file 2 claims for totaled cars in the last couple of months because a tree fell on one and now my car was flooded. So you make me feel better about having to file back-to-back claims. The last thing I want to ask you is this, which is, are you actually seeing cases already, seeing things come your way where you go, yeah, I think we got a good case against the insurance company here?
Yeah, a number of them. And a lot of times it's like, for example, one thing that we've been seeing from carriers is they will send an email to their policyholders that say, hey, click this link for mitigation services, and somebody will be in touch with you and come over and start to clean up the damage. And you click that link and you follow their process, and the person comes out and starts to clean up your damage. And then you get a note that none of this is covered and you need to pay the whole bill yourself. Which I don't know. I think is deceptive at best, because the policyholders following the instructions and literally the link sent by the insurance company, and then being told after they've incurred the cost from the restoration company that the insurance company told them to contact that this stuff isn't covered. So that I see that as a problem. And so there, even if there's not strictly coverage under your policy or you don't have flood insurance, that doesn't mean that you can just get treated any way the carriers want to.
It really feels like you, having worked for the insurance industry, makes you a powerful ally for a consumer in this situation because you know what they're looking for.
The other thing I would say too is that I see all sorts of different behavior by all sorts of different insurance companies, and you can start to over time put things into boxes and figure out who's doing what, whether this is good, whether this is bad. And it's a perspective that, as a policyholder with water in your basement and a 150-page document, it's just impossible to have. And so and the way we get that experience is by trying to help as many people as we can, see if there's anything they can do with the insurance situation they're faced with.
Justin Wallace with Wallace Law, thank you so much for all of this information. Makes me fired up. I want to go sue an insurance company. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, but I think it is great information for our viewers and for consumers in this situation. So thank you for being here on Open Record.
Thank you, guys, and thank you for giving me an opportunity to be able to tell people who are having these insurance problems, don't give up. Take a look at it. Don't just take what the insurance company is telling you for granted.
All right. We will take a break and come right back on Open Record after this.
Welcome back to Open Record. Aside from the insurance claims, aside from doing all this stuff, cleaning up is literally a full-time job, not just for the homeowners who are doing it, but for then the cities and the villages that are cleaning up after the people are hauling things to the curb. Cleaning up a city the size of Milwaukee, no small feat, obviously. The commissioner of the Department of Public Works, Gerald Kruschke, is here. Thank you for being here. How do you even start? We joked a little bit before we started recording again. Working 24/7. What has this been like? What kind of monumental task?
It has been a series of waves. I think when the flood occurred on the 10th, our first priority was with our parking enforcement. We had over 500 cars stranded inside of intersections that we had to worry about opening up traffic as floodwaters deceased. And then we started moving into that Monday, Tuesday, where we started to see the devastation across the city where people are losing their entire households. And that's slowly, I thought of it as a bell curve. We had some overachievers that started putting on their bulky materials at the curb on Monday, but you started seeing that peak towards the end of the first week. It was a series of events that we kind of had pivoted because we didn't know what this was going to look like. We started off on Monday. We're like, okay, this is normal bulky service. We're going to kind of just take care of this as, a normal operation. But then we seen the volume. So as we went through, we started opening up our self-help stations, longer hours and on Mondays. We started pivoting a lot of our internal crews that are usually in infrastructure and our sewers and moving them over to sanitation to try to supplement those. And as the weeks went on, we started bringing in private contractors just to haul the material out. It was a pretty intense scene at both of our drop-off centers where you've seen piles that were 12, 16 feet high of material that was coming in. We had a lot of positive impact from the community helping us out. We had over 20,000 vehicles come to our self-help centers, taking care of their own flood material besides the other 15,000 bulky waste areas that we have hit, and it's continuing even as today. So it's been pretty intense. I do give my folks a ton of praise. They're committed to the community. They says, I want to be out there. I want to deal with this. These are my neighbors. These are my family members. And a lot of our folks actually had damage in their basements as well. We've had some folks that had 6 feet of water, so they're working 12, 14-hour days and going home and trying to get stuff out of their basements as well. So the dedication from the employees, it was just unreal. And it is, I can't say enough about them. But the basically bulky waste and trash wasn't the only thing that we had to deal with. We had over 275 circuit outages across the city that our electrical services had to be working around the clock to get street lights on. And as of today, I think we're down to 6 out of 275, which is a great thing to hear. We already had 450 calls for trees and limbs down, which is our forestry crews. And then, obviously we had street ponding and sewer backups, et cetera, that are our sewer crews. But the majority, as we've gone over the past 2 weeks, has been that debris and waste that we've had to pick up, which has just been huge numbers.
It strikes me as you were talking through all that, it feels like DPW does everything because you're talking about removing the cars that are in the intersections. You got the sewer people doing stuff. You're cleaning up the stuff. The trees, the forestry.
Yeah.
It seems like whenever there's something, it's like, oh, who does that? Oh, that's DPW.
Yeah.
You have a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've talked internally here, and you don't really hear about the Department of Public Works until something goes wrong.
So true.
Every day you turn on your water, or you get your garbage picked up, or your roads are clear, things like that. But until something goes sideways, or they need our help, that's only when you hear about us. But you are correct. We are a huge department of 2,000 employees that pretty much do everything.
Can we talk about the manpower and the equipment needed to accomplish the cleanup of this size? Because do you have to supplement your team? Do you bring in extra workers? Do you bring in extra equipment? And has everyone pretty much been working 10 days straight?
Yeah, our crews have been working since day one, so that August 11th moving forward. So what we had to do as part of our operation, we had to pull folks from after the forestry caught up with their emergency. We moved 33 people over from that group to help with sanitation. We moved some of our street maintenance folks over, sewer folks, electrical services to put the priority on bulky waste. So that's one aspect when we talk about labor force. We also brought in over 40 outside private contractors as well to help supplement, and the county supplied us with 6 to 8 vehicles as well. We did have to cut off our recycling for a whole entire cycle because when you're looking at bulky waste, you can have skid loaders, but where do you put that? So you had to haul to the landfills, etc. So we had to stop recycling for a cycle, which I'm happy to say as of the 28th, we're going to be resuming recycling, which is huge. But other things that we had to cut off is, our mowing cycle had to delay for one cycle just so we can get bulky waste, some of our maintenance of our boulevards, so we did have to pivot what we normally do to prioritize getting basically this flood debris out of the right of way.
All this stuff you're doing, though, isn't free, especially the extra man hours and the other things. What is this costing, this cleanup so far?
Yeah, it's a moving number on a daily basis. Right now, we're kind of estimating anywhere from 25,000 a day on the low end to $60,000 a day on the high end. And all these are being tallied and documented. So
is it this over and above your regular budget?
Like overtime pay?
Yes, a lot of that is. Some of our folks are working 14-hour days, so it is above and beyond. Besides opening our self-help centers on Mondays and the work that they're doing on Saturdays and Sundays as well.
So where's that money going to come from? How do you end up paying for something like this? Because that adds up over time for sure.
Yeah, so what we've done is we tracked all of our time for that. So hopefully as we kind of submit this all into, obviously the Wisconsin Emergency Management and FEMA, we're hoping to get reimbursed for some of that. Otherwise, these are long discussions we're going to have, as the budget season comes to an end.
I know that I live in the village of Brown Deer, and I know initially after the flooding, they were like, oh, if you have stuff that's on the curb, call us and we'll, write your address down and we'll come pick it up. By about Tuesday, they were like, please stop calling. We'll see it on the curb and we'll come pick it up. I imagine your call centers in Milwaukee were seeing the exact same thing.
Yeah, so we did it from a multiple phase approach. So when we started off, our regular sanitation routes were still going on. So we have basically a software that they can identify, it's called a routeware. So they would identify bulky waste when they were on regular routes, which helped us put into the system. Folks were calling 286 City to report those. We also have an online app that you could actually report on. And then during the night, we would have our parking enforcement officers who were patrolling the area actually input as well. So it helped us route during this whole operation, which normally, years ago, would be a pen and paper. So we were blessed to have the technology that we have now.
I heard you talking about that route where you said that essentially, if I understand correctly, as your crews are driving around, it would document where some of this stuff was and then put it in the system for you. Because I imagine in a snowfall, you know where you've got to go because the snowfall happens and it's over. Yeah. But in this case, as you said, people are putting their stuff out at different times. So how did that how does it work, first of all, and how did that help you to sort of be more efficient with the way you picked up what you're getting?
Yeah, great question. So what happens is when there's a call that comes from the call center or someone uses the online app, or when we're in the field, so we have our workers that can actually take a photo and a GPS locates, okay, this is bulky waste or there's some other issue. We generally use it if someone didn't put their card out or other things like that we can go back and do that. But for here, it's been beneficial because we can constantly update where the bulky locations are. So in the beginning of a day, we can say to our crews, and we're throwing them out there because we tried to hit the hardest areas first, going, here's entire blocks or here's one-offs to help route them on a daily basis, which has helped us be way more efficient than we ever have been in the past.
When you're hit by a storm, a rain event of this scale, do you have an emergency plan in place, some sort of blueprint to follow, or are you just reacting?
It depends on what sort of emergency. So we have an Office of Emergency Management here, the city upholds. So what we get together is we throw up an entire background of it's a committee that gets together. So this includes myself, the fire department, the police department, anybody affected, the health department. So we get on a call instantly. So that night, it was basically midnight. We got on a call and says, okay, how are we going to attack this? And it's on an every few hour basis that we're meeting and trying to pivot. If DPW needs resources or MFD needs resources, we work as a team. Now, what happens after a natural disaster? That's always up in the air, and it's always a question because you don't know. So it's a dynamic, moving kind of target. But you just kind of talk together as a group and as city administrators and make the best decisions to kind of get basically resources back to citizens.
I know you guys had for a while extended hours at the self-help centers, but I have to say, for someone who lives outside the city of Milwaukee, I'm jealous that people have a place to go to do these things. I'm not jealous of the damage, but because where I live, I don't have a place to go. But obviously, you said a lot of people have used these self-help locations to bring their own bulky items and other things too. I know that those extended hours have gone away. You're back to regular hours, but is it still free? And how long do you think that's going to go on?
Yeah, so when we started after, I think it was the right on August 10th, we decided to open up on Monday, which we're generally closed. And that's so we opened up the last 2 Mondays. We went back to normal hours as of last week, which is 7 to 3 p.m. And that's Tuesday through Sunday. And everything has been free. So what we have right now is we're free all the way through Sunday this week, which is August 31st, which is a full 3 weeks after the storm has occurred. And then once after Labor Day, we'll be off. And then we're going to start back to normal collection on that Tuesday, which we'll start, incorporating our fees again.
If people are still bringing stuff up from their basements or anywhere else that was damaged, do you have any asks of them? I mean, this is kind of your platform to say, hey, please stop doing this or please do this instead.
Yeah, so what we're trying to do, and this is why we put a deadline on August 31st, is everyone just get their stuff out on the curb as quick as possible. We know there's going to be a one-off of people who can't access basements. I've been in neighborhoods where there's basements totally destroyed where they haven't been able to get in there. But for the most part, we're trying to get people out there before August 31st. If it's in our system, it still will be free. But we're just trying to pivot on because we have other services that we have to provide to our citizens, and we're just trying to transition back.
Winter's coming. It's not far away. And then you got to start thinking about things and shifting over to that sort of thing. Does this, I know you talked about FEMA potentially, the federal assistance may come through. How important for your department is it that this federal aid declaration happens in terms of setting yourself up for all of this winter and the next year?
For us, we were fortunate not to sustain a lot of infrastructure damage. We had a few bridges that had some washouts. But really for us, it's the financial component of how much effort went into collecting everyone's debris. For the most part, we're a department that responds to emergencies, as you've mentioned, snow and ice that we do on a regular basis. We have storm damage that's occurred. For us, I think it's the impact of the community and how they can get their basically get their feet underneath them again, because it's quite devastating in some neighborhoods. And for us, it's the financial component of, how much did we have to put towards this to actually, get people and get all that debris off the roadway.
We like to sometimes ask about the scale of things. Is this the worst you've seen is a question we often ask, but how does this compare to what you've dealt with in the past? What the city has had to handle? I mean, flooding happens, but how does this compare?
I don't think we've seen a flood like this or the impact of the community like ever before. When we talk about an emergency response, working long hours, 10 to 14-hour days, our folks are prepared for that. And that's what we've done many years during snow and ice seasons where we get continual snow. I would say that we're seasoned to deal with long hours, but this has just been different. We're not pushing snow. We're not salting. We're actually picking up heavy debris. So there has been an extra, component of, heavy waste and things that are going through and pivoting our equipment. So it's been eye-opening. I don't know in the history. I've been with the city nearly 20 years, and to actually have an impact from a natural disaster, it's just been huge.
We hope we don't see another one for a long time to come. DPW Commissioner Gerald Kruschke, thank you so much for joining us here on Open Record and spending this time with us.
Absolutely.
And we will go off the record when we come right back. And it is time for us to go
off the record. This is the part of the podcast where we get a little bit more casual, have a little fun.
Maybe we leave this in.
Answering a question for which we have not prepared.
Except
but who has prepared.
Right. But hang on. The reason I laughed is whenever I start with, and it's time to go off the record, Jenna jumps.
That's because you're like,
it comes, I guess I come in two forces.
Because you eat the mic.
Reverberates through my eardrum.
Anyway.
It's fine. We'll fix it in post.
We're off the record. Right?
Yeah, let's go.
Are you ready? Okay, I'm ready. Okay. I'm ready. I'm not prepared, but I'm ready.
Dave is going to be like, well, what just happened here? All right. My yellow Post-it note today says, now this song, it's about a song. songs. This question was asked in a recent, like a station manager meeting as like an icebreaker, and everyone kind of groans icebreakers, but this one elicited like a lot of conversation. So what song do you hate?
Oh, what song do I hate?
So I have a short list, and while you think of maybe the songs that you hate, the song I hate is Piano Man by Billy Joel.
Really?
I just like it. I think it's dumb. I also don't like that everyone at weddings sings it and they put their arms around each other and they sway in a circle. I think it's dumb.
You don't like that the piano sounds like a carnival?
Nope. Don't
and the
care.
microphone smells like a beer.
La, la,
No?
la, 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 la.
Okay.
I think it's dumb.
All right.
The other one I really dislike is Maggie May by Rod Stewart.
Okay. Fair enough.
You know, I don't hate it with a passion, but American Pie goes on forever.
Oh, it is a long song. It's like
it just
November Rain.
never ends.
Sometimes you do think like, how many verses are there? You know, I
Yeah.
had no idea there were that many verses.
And then it slows down and then it picks back up. And it's just,
there's a false ending or
Yes,
three.
yes.
Yeah,
Right.
no,
I don't
get
think I'd
that,
ever
yeah.
play it and make it to the end.
Yeah.
After like a minute, I'd be like, I got it.
okay, cool.
The number one thing I learned from that song is it made me want to ask the question, okay, what is rye? I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, like when I was younger, I
Yeah.
had whiskey and rye, but what's rye? Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know for me, like what jumps out at me right away as the song I hate, but I know what my wife hates.
Oh.
And she's not going to want to watch this episode. I don't think she watches anyway. But if she does, she's not going to want to watch this part because it's, we built this
Oh my
city.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
If I sing that, she will go nuts.
Bryan, let me just tell you, that's so wild. Okay. So I Googled after I wrote down my short list or long list. I Googled songs, most hated songs. And I'm not kidding.
That
We
is one
Built
of them,
This City
yeah.
was number one. I love that song.
What do you think it is that bothers people
don't-
so
I
much?
I don't
Like,
know.
can you
I
put
don't
your
know.
finger on it?
Right. Like, why does she
Repetitive,
dislike?
maybe? I
No,
don't
does she
know.
not appreciate that they could have built a city
So
on rock and roll?
Here's the thing. I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. Everyone knows, but KG95, a rock station there,
Yeah.
had an ad campaign that ran for years. We built this city. Like they were the rock
Oh.
station. We built this city on rock and roll.
Okay.
So when I hear that song, I think of KG95. It
Yeah.
has a place in my heart.
Yes.
But I sing that. Her boys know it too, my stepsons.
Yep.
And if they really want to irritate their mom and
Oh.
make her mad, they'll sing that song.
She doesn't appreciate the key change?
I don't know. She doesn't want to hear that song. Although she's one of those people, if I say, oh gosh, you know, I forgot about such and such song, and she'll say, don't sing it. I'll be thinking about it all day.
Oh.
Like there was one that came up yesterday. What was I talking about? The song by Lifehouse, which I didn't
yes.
know Lifehouse was a
That
band.
moment here
Oh,
with you.
hanging on a
was-
moment here
That's
with
yes,
you.
that's the one, right? And I said, did you guys know that was by a band called Lifehouse? I didn't know.
Yes.
One Hit
Oh,
Wonders.
it was.
But I was trying to tell her that story. She said, don't tell me.
Oh.
because
want
he
the
doesn't
song.
want
She
the
didn't.
earworm.
Okay.
So
I will say there are a lot of kids shows right now that they listen to The Descendants or like Zombies, like those soundtracks. After a while, I'm like, can we please listen to something else because I just
that's
can't
fair.
take it.
You know another song that gets stuck in your head? In your head, in your head. You know the zombie or whatever. Yeah, right. Anyway, so that's another one.
What
I
about
tried to
Cotton Eye Joe?
I feel like every pom routine, every dance
Yes.
team has done that song,
Yes.
so I hate that for that reason.
Yeah.
So, all right, there you go. Cotton Eye Joe. I hate Cotton
What
Eye
else
Joe.
is on your list, Sarah?
Barbie Girl. I think it's a dumb song.
Oh,
Yeah, no, fair.
I kind of don't mind it.
Okay, that's fine.
I mean, I wouldn't want to listen to it on repeat,
Yeah,
but
that's
once
fair.
every
You know
now
what I
and
hate
then.
about these because I don't prepare. We're gonna get done with this,
And
I'm
you're gonna think of 7
100
more
songs
songs.
I absolutely cannot
You know what?
stand.
Maybe we've never extended an off the record like to the
Into
next
the
episode.
next episode and come
but
back with
maybe
your
we
most
come
hated
back
songs.
with like, hey, if you caught last week's,
We thought of
But
more
wait,
songs.
I
there's
know what
more.
I want. We don't often, but for listeners, viewers, you need to write us, FOX6 Investigators at Fox.com, with the song you hate the most.
Yes,
And then we'll
please
talk about
do.
that on our next episode.
you know
How
what?
about that?
And maybe these two can put it on their Facebook pages or their Instagrams or whatever else they have with Fox 6, and you can solicit, and then we can talk about viewers' most hated songs.
I'm trying to think of I know what it is, because this is not, well, it's a song, I guess it is. It's not like on the radio, but it's, you guys will appreciate it because you have children.
Baby shark.
No,
I knew where he was going. Is that what you were
yeah,
doing?
that was it.
Yeah, I
That was it.
figured.
That was it.
figured.
Yeah, Baby Shark.
Okay.
And then what's the I know the Carly Rae Jepsen.
Call me maybe.
Yeah, nope. Don't want to hear that.
I just
one at
met
all.
you. There was one summer where that was like the song of
Yeah.
summer, and
Right,
I went to
know.
many
and
weddings.
That's why I hate it.
It was like on repeat at every wedding.
Yes.
So.
I know one other one. but we'll talk about it next time. Because there you go. There's your tease. Got to come back next week. We will take a break and wrap things up here right after this. That is all the time we have for this week. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss on Open Record, an issue you think we should investigate for Fox 6 News, or a song you hate you want us to know about, send us an email to fox6investigators@fox.com. As always, thank you to the people who make this podcast possible. Sarah, Jenna, Tim Primo behind the camera today, and our chief photographer, Kale Zimney, our editor, Dave Machuda. With that, I'm Bryan Polcyn. We'll be back next week.